Your Excellency Chair, allow me now to report on the institutional reform of the Africa Union. Excellencies, a year ago, this Assembly entrusted me with the pivotal responsibility of championing institutional reforms within the Africa Union. Since then, I have engaged in extensive consultations with key AU stakeholders to assess the progress of our reform agenda. These engagements have included discussions with the leadership of the Africa Union Commission, including the chairperson Musa Faki, the AU Institutional Reform Unit Secretariat, the Permanent Representative Committee, or PRC, here in Addis Ababa, the AU High Representatives for Financing, and the leadership of the Pan-African Parliament. Additionally, on 27 January 2025, I convened a high-level retreat in Nairobi attended by presidents of Comoro, Guinea-Bissau, Ethiopia, and Ghana, alongside the AUC chairperson and foreign affairs ministers from Mauritania, Rwanda, and Tunisia. The resounding message from this consultation was clear and unequivocal. Africa must complete its reform process with urgency and decisiveness. Excellencies, it is evident that progress has been made in restructuring AU organs, institutions, and offices. Of the 57 AU entities earmarked for reform, 42 have been assessed, and the report is currently under consideration by the Permanent Representatives Committee. I therefore propose that this Assembly directs the PRC, with the support of AUC, to conclude its review of the 42 entities and submit a report to the Executive Council during its session in July later this year. The study on the division of labor between the Africa Union Regional Economic Committees and member states was completed in December 2024 and submitted to the Africa Union Commission chairperson. It was subsequently circulated to all Africa Union commissioners, CEOs of RECs, and was held and representatives from 14 member states. A retreat, Mr. Chairman, was held from 6 to 7 February this year to review the report. I propose that this Assembly directs the relevant AU stakeholders to expedite its consideration and ensure that clear recommendations are presented at the Media Coordinating Summit meeting in July 2025. Excellencies, based on my consultations and careful observations, I submit the following 8 proposals to accelerate and complete the Africa Union reform process for your keen consideration. Number 1, to maintain the momentum of reforms, enhance oversight, and entrench collective ownership, the Africa Union reform process requires a consistent strategic guidance at the highest level. I propose the formation of a 5-member ad hoc committee of heads of state and government chaired by the champion. The 5 members of the Bureau could form the rest of the membership of this oversight committee of heads of state. Number 2, to consolidate the pace of progress, I recommend that this Assembly authorizes an extraordinary summit in July 2025 within the Media Coordination Summit dedicated solely to the Africa Union reform agenda. This will allow for final consultations with AU stakeholders, including the newly elected Commission, and the submission of concrete proposals for the final phase of our reforms. The African Union, number 3, the African Court of Justice is a crucial pillar of our governance architecture, yet its implementation has stalled since 2009 due to the discussions of merging it with the African Court of Human and People's Rights. I propose, Mr. Chairman, that this Assembly mandates the Africa Union Commission and PRC to finalize the court's operational requirements, including budgetary provisions, and that the Executive Council conducts judicial elections during its ordinary session in July this year. There is a need, number 4, there is a need for the Pan-African Parliament to evolve from a symbolic entity into a legislative force. So far, only 15 member states have ratified the Malabo Protocol, which seeks to grant the Pan-African Parliament permanent membership and legislative authority. I urge this Assembly to mobilize political support to accelerate the ratification process. Number 5, the 2018 AU Assembly decision called for a clear categorization of AU decisions to enhance implementation. Yet 7 years later, the absence of structured mechanisms that lead to inefficiencies and weak enforcement, I propose that this Assembly directs the African Union Commission and the Office of the Legal Counsel to complete the categorization of African Union decisions without further delay to ensure clarity, accountability, and effective execution. Number 6, the dire peace and security situation in Africa partly indicts the continent's peace architecture. Africa Peace and Security Architecture, APSA, therefore needs to be strengthened to respond effectively to emerging security threats, including terrorism. I recommend that this Assembly authorizes the African Union Commission chairperson, in consultation with the champion, to appoint a panel of 5 eminent African experts to review AU's peace and security framework within the next 4 months. Number 7, despite Decisions 635 of 2017, limiting the AU summit agenda to 3 strategic areas, the summit program remains overly broad. I propose that this Assembly reinforces Decision 635 by delegating non-strategic matters to the Executive Council and recommends a review of the Assembly's format at the Extraordinary Summit in July this year. Number 8, 10 years ago in Johannesburg and Kigali, member states committed to funding 100% of African Union operational budget, 75% of program budget, and 25% of peace support operations, targets that remain unmet to date. I propose that this Assembly directs the Executive Council to convene an extraordinary session with finance ministers to develop a roadmap for achieving these targets within 5 years. To guide this process, I further propose that the Assembly directs Dr. Donald Kaberuka, AU High Representative for Financing the Union, to develop a concept note and discussion paper to guide the proposed joint ministerial meeting.